Here, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be going over the patch notes for season 8. I cut this straight from the live stream on Twitch. I hope y'all enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. Quick rundown. Preview events, capture the flag, 3v3 arena map, OPR. They have bare bones now, so you don't have any perks, right? Coral Divide, you've already played it. They upgraded a couple things, right? Now, on the original map, they changed the way Outpost Seoul is in the middle. They added some buildable things, changed a couple things with it. Hourly map rotations. So our PvP modes will now rotate the available maps hourly instead of every 2 weeks. Right? Cool. Awesome. Much rejoicing. Right? Cool. Hardcore server. Essentially, if you die, you only get 1 and 2 tier of rewards. If you don't die on the new hardcore seasonal server, there's a tier 3 of rewards. You can get all the stuff that you can unlock, like artifacts and trophies and all this other stuff, will be available to one of your legacy or fresh start characters, but not the hardcore seasonal one. That one goes away. Updated content to be more accessible. So players will now receive plus 25 to all attributes up to 5x for every death. So if you want just sets 1 and 2, die a bunch, come back, actual lore of New World, you're strong as fuck, you kill everything, move on. Season pass, you get the artifacts, you get transmog tokens, barbershop tokens. There's a free pass, there's a paid pass. Obviously the paid pass has marks of fortune, more tokens, more matrices, stuff like that. Cool, great. Barbershop, change your shit up. Nice. Expeditions Unleashed, level 70 mobs are going to spawn in the world. They're going to drop 725 guaranteed, then 710 to 715 for other rewards. These are going to be weekly rotating. So you'll be able to, be able to go out there, kill them, do whatever, right? New artifacts. We got the crown, which seems like it's like a Toon Leather Pants, adds attribute points as well as bonus gem functionality, which we don't really know what that means yet, but I personally think that it's the OKB artifact, considering I wear a crown on stream and they know that. So that's me. They have what seems like a life-stealing chess piece. They have a sword that generates more threat and damage mitigation. They have a shield that decreases your armor but increases everybody else's. They have a blunderbuss, which turns somebody into a fiery blast shot. They have these gloves, which empower stacks with ability usage. Then they have these boots, which they call greaves, which I'm not okay with, but regardless, adds a speed boost when you use your heart rune. Nice. Combat adjustments, okay? They have all these new survival potions, small burst of healing followed by passive regen, right? So it's like a burst regen pot. They have health shots, which are no longer pots. I mean, they are, but they're not. Faster cooldown than a regular health pot, but less healing. Shield potion grants damage mitigation for 3 hits. Grit ward potion grants uninterruptible effect. Lifesteal potions increase the power of all life-stealing effects. Aim lock. Aim lock will now break when you ADS or if the target goes behind you out of sight. Cool, great. New gems. This is what I'm excited for. Jade Gem. Basic attacks inflict a stack of disease, reducing the target's incoming healing by 2.5% and outgoing healing by 1.25% per second, or per stack for 3 seconds, 10 stacks. So now you kind of, once you get to your 10 stacks, you're now past plague crits, right? Very cool. If you put them in your armor, you get 6.2% disease like mitigation, right? Pretty cool. Turquoise gems. When you put them in your weapon, you have 12% armor penetration, which is actually insane if you're pairing that with like penetrating backstab and like rogue or something of that sort, right? If you put it in your gear, you gain 3% physical and elemental armor. I'm sorry, not or. Physical and elemental armor, which you can also put in your trinkets. That has a gem slot as well, right? I don't think this is going to be as strong as people think it is, because 3% physical and elemental armor is not as strong as flat mitigation, but we'll see how it all works out, right? You might be able to pair it with a bunch of fortifies and stuff like that. That really just like elevates it, right? So we'll see. Sundering attacks. Attacks inflict a stack of 4% rend, each stack lasting 6 seconds for 5 stacks, right? So now you can do a 20% rend on any weapon, it seems, which is really cool. Alternating enchantment. This seems really cool. Like, I really, 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 really like this. This is going to be like a very big, like hammer, greatsword, hatchet, like all that kind of stuff, right? So hitting with a basic attack will increase the base damage of your next ability by 10%. Then when you hit him with the ability, it increases the base damage of your next basic attack by another 10%. And this is melee only. So that's really cool. Then Vital Synergy. I really, 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 really like this one for VGIG. When your health is above 50%, gains 20% stamina regen. But while your stamina is below 50%, incoming healing is increased by 20%. That is so big, bro. Having another 20% divine on top of Ankh and 50 focus, gross. Hardcore parkour. Gain 18% haste for 5 seconds after triggering a traversal action. So like if you do any kind of like jumping over or whatever, you gain haste. Cool. Stop, drop, and roll dodging will reduce the duration of all burn damage over time effects by 25%. Found on your amulets. We don't know what that will or won't stack with, so that'll be fun to test out as well. Your armor perks, they stack 3 times. So increase the potency of haste by 9%, which if you have all of them, 27%. Decrease the potency of exhaust by 12% or up to 36%. Potions receive a 3% increase in healing up to 9%, or lifesteal is increased by up to 12%, 4% per piece. Okay. Open world is getting an upgrade. You can now break camps and do all that stuff. So if you're PvP flagged and you make a camp, only your faction can use that camp, but you can also destroy it. Pretty cool. You can now skip the pre-match phase in 3s and OPR if everybody opts in or a certain amount of players opt in. You also have a spectator camera in Expedition boss fights and 3v3s, so you can see the other remaining players that are still fighting. Mutated Expeditions reward adjustment. So now you can get up to 90 damaged eyes a week to craft gear that's 725. So these damaged eyes are from Gorgon Raid. You get 30 a day from Gorgon Raid, and then you also get some for like mutators and stuff like that. Super cool, whatever. Just extra RNG, Gamba, you know, big timer stuff. They also removed the fact that you need like prismatic stuff to roll it and all that stuff, right? So just more RNG Gamba for us. Great. Patch notes. This is what I'm really, 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 really excited for as well, is Combat General. So everything that you could pretty much think of gets an increase in damage in PvE. So now it's no longer just going to be a finisher meta, right? You don't just have bleed and evade rapiers anymore. Now you can use blunderbusses, bows, muskets, flails, ice gauntlets, hammers, great axes, hatchets. Fire staff even got a buff, but they did some additional reduction for it to be weaker in PvP. So that's pretty cool. Void Gauntlet got increased as well. Range fall off. So from 40 to 30, 50 to 40, and then triggered at 40 instead of 50 as well for musket stuff. Yeah. I totally agree, Nick. I totally agree, but we'll get to that. Reduced the Hunter Con attribute bonus from 10% to 5%. Pretty crazy. Bunch of stuff they updated so you can't like basically load into a death screen. Fixed a bunch of visual effects, which is great. Now, here's the other thing. This is huge. This is also huge. So your perks, right? Gems. Malachite gained a 2% increase, which is like, okay, still probably not going to be used much. Onyx, however, is now 20% instead of 18, which is really good. Moonstones in your armor, though, lost 0.25%. So what that means is things are going to swap up where people are just going to run slash conditioning. Most are anyway. And then you're going to run slash conditioning and then like the other gems to mitigate stuff, right? Stronger that way. Shield perks can remain active without compatible weapon, which is great because people were exploiting like extra refreshings and stuff, which whatever. This is what I'm excited for. Keenly Fortified, bro. Increase the power from 10% to 15% armor. So when you crit, you gain 15% armor for 5 seconds with only a 7-second cooldown. This was the update Keenly Fortified always needed. Always needed. Fractured Ren increased the power from 12 to 16%, which is pretty cool, I guess, but nobody's really going to use this. Trenchant Rend increase the max duration from 12% to 14%, which is great. Reduce the cooldown from 12 seconds to 10 seconds. So Trenchant Ren's going to have a little bit more viability. Will it be used in PvP? Probably not, but having it in PvE is going to be great. Grit Ward, they reduced from 3% to 2.6%, which is like nobody was using Grit Ward anyway. Doesn't really matter. Sustain Infliction from 1 second to 1.5 seconds, which is kind of crazy, but again, more of a PvE thing, doesn't really matter. Desperate Empower is getting a buff. So they add the functionality that grants 10% haste when you're stammed. So not only are you doing more damage, but you're also moving faster. So it rewards you for being stammed out. Kind of crazy, but cool. Mortal Lifesteal, Mortal Energy, Mortal Fortification, Mortal Power, and Mortal Refreshment are all allowed to be on your armor now, which is pretty cool. It's different, right? It might switch some stuff up a little bit, maybe. We don't know. Vigor increased the max height from 18% to 23%, bro. That is insanely large. Like, it seems like they're really trying to help with dots, right? Which is awesome. Stam Recovery got nerfed again. Not that many people were using it, but it got nerfed again. Fix an issue with DI, so that way it increases the applied dots potency, which was like, for me, I was having troubles with Keenly Jagged and some other stuff that wasn't really working very well with it. Whatever. They reduced Leeching Flurry, so that's taking a pretty big hit, right? Enfeebling Poison Shot, they increased the weaken duration, which is pretty good. They reduced the duration of Enfeebling Skewer by 2 seconds, which is like, okay, I get that. It was a very, very large weaken for a very long time. I totally understand that balance. Leeching Cyclone, I mean, it's a nerf, but it's not like insane to the point where you're not going to use it anyway. Rain of Arrows, this is interesting. So you increase the damage while further away. So if you're over 20 meters away using Rain of Arrows, it actually hits harder, which is kind of cool. Deadly Flourish got a buff. So your next hit is a guaranteed crit, which is pretty cool. Voracious Blade, however, took a huge nerf from 35% on armor, 55 on weapon to 28 and 44. So that's good because they're adding so much other like life-stealing potions and on your gear and all that stuff, right? So it's good that they're nerfing that. They need to. The attribute bonuses, they reduced the dot duration extensions on int and dex by a pretty large amount, 5% on dex and 10% on int. So that's good. Illegal perk combos, right? So Glacial Tarn and the Sandworm medium boots are losing 15% on their Enchanted Ward and Elioversion. Now, we did the math. Elioversion is going to about 4%. Enchanted Ward is going to 3.5%. So having an illegal perk combo is still insanely good, but it's just a little bit less. So it's going to make more things a little viable, right? Now, Serenity and Venom. I don't know if I fully agree, but I do like the idea behind it. They're reducing the efficiency of Trenchant Strikes and Trenchant Crit perks by 10%. Because you have that illegal perk combo. Venom and Serenity are two very used weapons. Let's change up the meta a little bit, do some things, right? Great. Consumables with shared cooldowns have been updated, right? So now you basically have a built-in refreshing toast because you have 20% cooldown reduction for shared cooldown categories, but it does not stack with any other cooldown reduction source. So you kind of have like a built-in one. They tried to buff regen serums again by increasing all the values, but they also increased the cooldown again. Again, regen serums are still going to be used everywhere. They're great. Desert Sunrise from 17.5% to 25%. 25% off of your dots is insane. Desert Sunrise is going to be used all over the place, everywhere, with good reason. Artifacts, the wall. They added functionality that slightly reduces stam regen by 10% when you have the wall on, which is great. But they also updated it so it has 13% elemental damage reduction and 10% elemental armor. So now the wall, you're not going to be as crazy tanky by just holding your shield up because you have 10% less stam regen, but they also up the amount of elemental reduction that you have in armor and flat mitigation, which is cool. The Butcher took a nerf from 33% to 25%, which I think is okay. I think that's fine. Survivor's Coat took a nerf, which I don't think was needed because nobody uses it anyway. Conversion gems do not work in Inferno, and they're not intended to work in Inferno. Therefore, put a different gem. Put a Onyx or an Emerald or something. Fixed an issue where Burninator was not applying on heavy attacks hit with the Flare passive, which means Burninator with Flare is going to really, really hurt some feelings. Not that we care about Flare users, but it's going to hurt some feelings. Updated the Heavy Burden, Shrapnel Shot, and Inner Power Artifact perks to be more clear that they do work on both weapons, which is fine. Heart Runes, they buffed Dark Ascent a little bit by increasing the amount of iframes during the startup of it. They also increased the AoE of Dark Ascent. The Worm Heart Rune has Grit on startup now, which is awesome. Primal Fury got a crazy increase of the base damage by 15%, but they did decrease the weaken that is inflicted upon you when using it, the armor reduction that is inflicted upon you when using it, and then they also adjusted the velocity of the jumping so you're not just flying across the map, which is great. Weapons, the Rapier, they basically nerf the crap out of Evade, which is fine. We need to swap up the metas, and this is hopefully going to do that. Sword and Shield. So they added a 1-second cooldown to prevent triggering rapidly, allowing infinite duration of duration extensions. So that's great. They fixed an issue where a player would not turn properly when activating Leaping Strike in a different direction than the character was originally facing. So again, you know, I am on Valhalla. I'm on Valhalla, Hudson, Pangea, and a bunch of other servers. Ice Gauntlet. They fixed the wind chill ability. They fixed the issue where players could target lock with their own pylons. Updated Ice Gauntlet so Entombed will not count. Wait, hold on. Updated so that Ice Gauntlet skill Entombed will not be counted as a participant in the world encounters. I don't even know what that means, but whatever. Flail, they fixed some visual effects and some typos. Fine. Blunderbuss, Run and Gun. They shortened the haste duration, but increased the speed to make up for the duration. Ice Gauntlet. They fixed the issue where Strangling the Tomb was not being extended by the Fortified perk. And then fixed that people can move while entombed. Great. Musket, they fixed a bunch of issues with sticky bombs and traps and visual effects. Great. Void Gauntlet, they reduced Void Blade heavy attack translation, so it's not gonna, like, I guess, be as sticky or magnetic. That's my understanding of it. They also fixed some issues with Tether and Essence Rupture. And then also Harvest Essence would double up if you were jumping while using it. Fire Staff, they reduced the base damage in PvP by 3%, which is like, we'll see. Flamethrower would go on cooldown if you had Stone Form and were staggered. So they fixed that. And they fixed an issue where Meteor Shower would sometimes not have the visual effects. Great. Great Sword fixed an issue with killing certain enemies with the upgraded Roaring Rupture. Would play the wrong animation, whatever. Updated target lock to only lock on enemies, not allies, when aiming throwable items while Life Staff is equipped. Fixed an exploit that allowed players to heal group members using Life Staffs who were out of line of sight. Again, huge because we thought that they just undid what they did before, and we thought that line of sight was no longer a thing, but in reality, that was just an exploit. It is now fixed. Therefore, line of sight is now a thing. OPR, they made it so the gates can only be repaired by one person at a time. They decreased the keg interaction to set fuse from 5 seconds to 2 seconds, which is huge, in my opinion. Absolutely huge. The kegs for the win. Remove the resource cost for building the big like shields, the wooden shields. So that's great. You're now granted 50 Azoth when joining OPR. So there's actually more incentive to go capture your point and capture mid faster, because now you can use the Azoth to get your speedy cakes or whatever you use and your cleansing potions and everything, right? OPR repeaters can now go beyond 180 degrees, which is really cool. They fixed some prompts and things like that. Great, cool. They also made it so when the brute retreats, he no longer gains all of his health back, which is insanely awesome. They updated deserter penalties in 3v3s so that players will no longer receive a penalty if they're the only one to join their team when the match starts. They fixed an issue where Phoenix would trigger after the round ends and it would leave people dead for the next round. They added a 30-second AFK kick timer during arena rounds, which is really good, right? Because now people can't just sit AFK in the spawn and try to get credit for stuff. Very cool. Like that. They fixed a bunch of open world quests. They fixed a bunch of stuff in the expeditions and raids, which brings me to the Hive of Gorgon stuff, because that's like really where our end game is, right? They fixed some things with the Broodmother, with like the color of the sleeping effects. They changed it so the eggs can't spawn outside the map anymore. So like people have to really kill ads. They also fixed it so Typhon is no longer able to use the red thorns that come up, as well as the scream that pushes you back or whatever to like just kill you one shot. Huge W. The worm, however, I didn't really go over too many of these, but they fixed a bunch of stuff with the worm ads, which is great. I don't know why they have Laz and stuff in here, but whatever. Cool. And then they fixed a bunch of stuff with, again, open world things, target lock on PvE stuff. They fixed some stuff with all the social UI and interactions and stuff like that, which is cool. Economy, gear swap functionality. You used to be able to get blister weave, which is no longer in the game, so they changed it to scale cloth, which is great. Oh, let's see what else. All weapon skill perks are now also a possible roll on loot items from all locations. So everything that they just added to the game, they are now going to drop open world as well, instead of just being craftables, which is awesome. The perks, Empowering Breaker, all the mortal perks on weapons, Trenchant Crits, Trenchant Rend, Trenchant Recovery, Thwarting Counter, Thwarting Strikes, and Desperate Prayer have been removed from the perk buckets related to the Hive of Gorgons and Sandworm. So you get better RNG rolls, which is great. Unless, of course, you use Thwarting Strikes or Thwarting Counter, which most people don't unless you're a bruiser. So bruisers, you know, get effed. Fix some other stuff with like the faction shop. They added Gorgon inductors to the faction shop, which is really cool. And then they updated the cost of a bunch of items to hopefully reflect the economy better, which is great. They updated the following fishing salvage arcana ingredients and moved them up to tier 5, which are the cod eyes, the starfish, and the toxins, which is great. They fixed some elemental gift stuff, rabbit petting, blah, 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 blah. Some more UI fixes, which is great. They fixed some DX12 stuff, supposed to be better, more better visually, you know, better running of the game, quality of life type stuff. And then general fixes, client freezes, client crashes that were happening. They fixed a lot of that, which is awesome. The blurriness and all that was happening. And that is your Spark Notes for Season 8 patch. Got you.